Hi there, Esther from Business Analysis Excellence. So this is just a very quick video to put your attention on the 7 things that you must do to make sure that you add value as a business analyst in 2025 and going into 2026. Now, I will keep this really brief and I'm not going to take too long because I know these days everything happens quite fast. Which makes me believe that you know that you should, as a business analyst, already make sure that you always record your workshops and get the transcripts downloaded afterwards, and then use and be able to write really good and specific prompts to generate user stories and requirements and acceptance criteria. So I'm not going to labor that because I think all of us are now getting used to always having all the notes recorded and transcribed. We also know how to get those requirements out of the transcripts really easily by doing some really good prompting. However, there are some areas that we as business analysts need to add value once we've got that output from the LLM. So if you've been using Copilot to spit out the user stories, now this is the next step where you need to go ask yourself a few questions during your review. So the basic point is you have to really audit your requirements output. And these are the things that I want you to pay specific attention to. First of all, you need to check, did anyone actually say this in the workshop? So does the requirement that you have in front of you, is it asked for? Has it been asked for by somebody in the workshop? Can you absolutely remember it or see it in the transcript so that you can do that mapping? So do that for all of the requirements that you've got in your output to make sure that yes, this is actually something we asked for. Now the next thing is you need to ask your requirements by doing this review is, are you seeing any new requirements that creeped in? So new requirements that may not have been mentioned, that kind of crept into the list. These could sometimes be non-functional requirements. This is something that happens a lot. So just be aware that there may be new requirements, and what I would recommend is that if they sound like they are making really good sense and they could potentially be good requirements, pull them aside and use them as your basis for validation with your stakeholders when you get to the validation session. All right, so then the next thing you need to do is, if we can just get another copy there, is a little bit like this previous point about the new requirements that crept in. But this is about checking that your requirements or your user stories are actually in scope, that you do have are in scope of what has been agreed. So sometimes you might find that some of the LLMs would come up with requirements that is relevant to the conversation, but it completely falls outside of scope. And if you can't find that match where somebody has actually asked for it, I would recommend that you either tweak it to be in scope in the way that it was intended before you do your validation with your stakeholders, or you put it aside also as an item to double check with others. Okay, so what else do you need to do? You have to, the other thing is the user acceptance criteria is very useful. I mean, it provides you with an amazing baseline, but you need to make sure that the user acceptance criteria is realistic. Is this something that could actually be tested in the way that it's been provided to you by the LLM? So read it carefully. Also make sure, is it complete? Did it miss any scenarios? And remember, you can reiterate your prompt. So ask it to refine, validate, question, all of that. But I'm sure you're used to that by now. But make sure that it's realistic and that it could be handed over to the test team to develop test scripts from. Okay, and of course, check that it's complete, that you've got enough user acceptance criteria scenarios to cover that particular user story. Now, interestingly, I see that I've only got 5 stars, so I'll add the other 2 stars as special bonus points. But the next one I wanted to talk to you about, who benefits from your requirement. This is interesting. Sometimes the LLM will come up with their own new personas. So make sure that you can align each of the requirements that you have to a specific stakeholder group. This is essential, but again, it comes back a little bit to, did anybody actually ask for this? And then you make sure that it's pointed to the right stakeholder group. Okay, so now we've still got 2 stars that I need to add. Looks like my counting skills is a little bit lacking. All right, so the 6th point that I want you to think about, is I want you to think about dependency. So again, what other requirements is this requirement that you've got out of the transcript dependent on? Make sure that sometimes, some of the things that is asked for might also require quite a lot of other things to be included as requirements in order to be realized. So identify those types of requirements in your list and question that with the LLM, but also question it with the stakeholders so that you can go and kind of double click on it, as it were, so that you can make sure that you capture the complete set of requirements and not just, down the track requirements. So it's a great way to spot things that may not have been thought about during the workshop, and where there might be more elicitation that needs to be done. So dependency on other requirements to exist. Okay, now the very last one that you should think about, just in this little list of 7 things as your initial audit list, is stakeholder, what I refer to as stakeholder silence. So, as you would know, regular business analysis would always require you to validate whatever it is that you've come up with, whether it was the LLM doing it or you doing it. You need to go back to your stakeholders, make sure that it's complete, that it's accurate. So basically go through that validation step. Now, with stakeholder silence, what I mean with this one is if you read out the requirement to someone, will they question it and say, hang on, I don't actually think that was what we were talking about, or hang on, that is asking for something different than what the intention was. Now, this could just be because the LLM came up with something, or maybe somebody did ask for that particular requirement, but it needs further exploration, it needs clarification in terms of intention, scope, and so forth. So it's always good to go and check what would your stakeholders say if you read that requirement out loud. Now, what I've just taken you through might sound like quite a lot of things to do, but the more you practice, you can actually scan this quite quickly because you've saved a lot of time with the LLM producing the list of user stories. You just jump straight to the validation step now instead of having to write it all up. So I hope this is helping you think about really validating those requirements and adding value, identify gaps, identify dependencies, and of course identify scope creep, identify the personas that it's aimed at, make sure that it's for the right people, and make sure that it was actually asked for. Okay, so I hope this has been helpful. If it was, and you want to dive back and deep into business analysis as well as how to apply AI, I recommend you go visit baexcellence.com. I've got 3 tiers. One will be suitable, perfect for your needs. Otherwise, reach out to me. I'm happy to have a chat to see how we can make sure that you are on this train of becoming a modern, future-ready business analyst. Have a great day, and I'll see you soon.